This is the Jedburgh Podcast. I'm the creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Each episode, I speak with transformative leaders, visionaries, drivers of change, and those dedicated to winning, no matter the challenge. The Jedburgh Podcast is founded in the lineage of the special operations Jedburgh teams of the past and is produced in partnership with Talent War Group, a management consulting and executive search firm focused on helping you optimize the people side of your business. We're sponsored by Jersey Mike's Subs. Together, we share the mission of giving, making a difference in someone's life. Visit the Jedburgh Podcast, Talent War Group, and Jersey Mike's Subs on the web and on social media. A percentage of all proceeds is dedicated to the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. Skiing is a simple yet complex sport. In theory, we strap a pair of sticks to our feet, then we hurl our bodies down an ice-covered side of a mountain with only a thin metal edge to control our descent. In practice, this simple act is a dynamic balance of physical capability, technical prowess, and mental and emotional strength. World Cups and Olympic medals are won and lost by hundredths of a second by skiers traveling over 80 miles an hour, covering several miles of distance and thousands of vertical feet. These feats of speed, athleticism, and precision breed competition, a healthy dose of fear, and awe for all of us who watch and have ever dreamt about standing atop the winner's podium. Beijing 2022 is here, and it's time to kick off the Jedburgh Podcast tribute to the Winter Olympics. Stephen Nyman is an American legend in downhill Olympic and World Cup skiing. He's reached 11 podiums, earned 3 World Cup titles, and did something no other American downhiller has ever done, reaching the podium 4 times in a row in the run-up to the 2018 Olympics. He's been on the U.S. ski team since he was 19 years old. Stephen joined me from Switzerland as he prepared for his final qualification event in the giant slalom and downhill competitions. A strong performance here would earn him a spot on his 5th Olympic team. Stephen and I break down ski racing, the physical demands, the technical skill, and the mental rigor needed to compete and win at the highest level by the slimmest margins. Stephen also talks about the importance of preparation, the fear of failure, the courage to act, the grit needed to recover from devastating injuries, and the drive to win after 20 years of competition. Stephen and I both shared the boyhood dream of racing in the Olympics. He's still pushing the limits at 40 and competing. I'm thinking there's still time for me. Stephen, welcome to the Jedburgh Podcast.
I'm fired up to be here. Thanks for having me.
People ask me all the time, what's the best part about hosting a podcast? And I tell them, I get to talk to these amazing people who've done like the coolest things. But even more importantly than that, because I'm the host and the creator of the show, I get to pick the top. To say, I love this, or I don't want to talk about that. So, we're never going to do that episode. Now that I actually have a good amount of listeners too, I also get to talk about things that they care about. And when I was thinking about the Olympics that were coming up, I'm like, this is right in my wheelhouse. I grew up skiing, a huge part of my life. We have to cover the Olympics. And you are joining us from the first European edition, being in Switzerland right now, of the Jedburgh Podcast, to one of the most famous and well-known men's U.S. skiers ever in the history of the sport. So truly an honor to be here. And I have to caveat this whole conversation with the only commonality that we have in skiing between the two of us is we both started skiing at 2 and we both wanted to be Olympic skiers. The difference is you actually achieved that. Somewhere along the way, I went a different path. Other than that, I'm not comparing myself in any way to you. I don't know. I think a lot of things happened. So I always thought, when will be the year in my life when I'll get to go like to Colorado for the winter or Utah for the winter and just work at a ski resort, live there, and then that will be the catalyst to me becoming some sort of championship skier. And then I realized that, well, I'm 41 years old and that's not going to happen. Although you're pushing it and you're still in it.
I'm still in it. I've somehow holding. You could always be a lifty, I think you've watched a lot of movies that Aspen Extreme and the classic ski themed movie right there. Maybe you could create your own success story and sell the whole story right there. There you go. You got it, Fran.
From podcast host to lifty at Breckenridge. As long as I got the free pass, but I have the epic passes, which like this year we're almost free considering how much they dropped the price.
Oh yeah.
And I got the military discount.
I always look back at my life and I'm just like, wow, how did I get here? How did I? For one, I've been on the U.S. ski team for 20 years now. Two, how am I competing at the top level for so long? And I just got to pinch. A lot of these guys that I travel with, they'll go out this or that, or right now it's dumping in Tahoe. I'm missing the PAL. I'm like, you got an entire mountain shut for you to go as fast as possible and challenge yourself to the max. Like, don't complain. Like, you're a downhill ski racer, and you don't have to wait in the lift lines, and everything's free. Like,
yeah,
who cares if it's snowing in Tahoe right now?
Let's talk about the games. So the games are coming up. They're in Beijing. You've competed in three previous Olympics: 2006, 2010, 2014. You qualified in 2018, but then you were injured, and I want to get into that in a bit. The next week is the final qualifying rounds for this upcoming Olympics. What is when you think about the possibility of competing in your fourth Olympics, qualifying for your fifth, what's that mean?
Honestly, physically, I felt great. The biggest thing is everything that I've overcome. The past 4 years have been, I should say 5 years have been brutal, physically, just injury wise. And to be able to do it and to get there, for one, with age, and you can attest to this, you just wiser and you have a better understanding of everything. I definitely don't have the balls that I used to have, but the balls that I used to have got me in trouble, and I'd make all kinds of mistakes. Now I have a good understanding of what I'm trying to do and how I need to do it to get there. And the consistency and the longevity, that's what I understand now. But I definitely am. I have 2 kids. I have a family, and there's just a lot riding on the line there, I guess I should just say. One of the most would be to do it and have my daughter watch. Like, I have a 4-year-old daughter who gets it now. Like, usually it's just her crying and I want to get out of here and I don't want to deal with this in the finish area. But now this year she's like, Dad's on TV. Oh, Dad has the green light. Dad has the red light. Like, red light's bad. Green light's bad. The green light, But the other day she was watching TV and Dad had a lot of red lights. Dad has a lot of red lights, but we still love him.
Yeah, you're still number one in her book. It's okay.
Oh yeah. But I just like to inspire her and to inspire others, and that's just like incredibly meaningful to me. A lot of people talk like that's what my career is about right now, but I truly believe I can and win. My results haven't showed it this year, but I do believe I can. And I've shown a lot of speed. I've just had a lot of mistakes. And if I can refine some of those mistakes, I can be ready for the big boys.
Well, let's break down skiing like as a sport for a few minutes. I want to do this because I'm extremely interested in your perspective on all of this, and also to break it down a little bit for those listeners who might not know a lot of the backside and the technical aspects of the sport. But when I think about skiing, I think that there's 3 components to this sport, and you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong or add or subtract, but I think about the need for physical capability. That's number 1. Number 2, there's a technical skill requirement, and that's in terms of both the technique that you have to exhibit, well, really physically, but also the equipment side of things. And then there's this emotional aspect, the trust and confidence that's required at all levels. And it doesn't matter if you're a beginner skier on the bunny hill or you're an Olympic racer at 90 plus miles an hour. You have to have trust and confidence in what you're doing. So I want to break down each one of these, and let's start with physical capability. Fitness is a huge part of your success, your longevity, the training. I was watching some of the races that you competed in the past as I prepared for this, and one of the announcers at one point called you a specimen. And now I'm going to tell you that you are 6'4", 220. Okay, bro, you are ripped. All right. Like I'm 41, like you're pushing 40, and like I work out every day and was a Green Beret, but like I got nothing, and I can't even go there because you're absolute phenomenal physical condition. Can you talk about the physical requirements of skiing and the difference between a recreational skier like me and an Olympic athlete, an Olympic competitor like you when it comes to having to physically prepare for this sport?
It just so happens that this race here right now, Wengen, Switzerland, is the longest race on tour. It's 2.5 minutes long. It's the most demanding in my mind, and physically demanding, I should say, because you're going for 2.5. Basically an all-out sprint. It's an 800-meter dash, and then at the end there's S turn in the finish that is just brutal, and it's so hard to muster the confidence to really stick it in there and push hard on those last. I've lost a second there in a 6-second segment. I shouldn't say 6 seconds, whatever. It's like 10, 15 seconds, but it's just because I was so gassed, and you're not able to do that. So for one, we need endurance. There's a few types of endurance. There's the long days on the hill. Like we're out there for 4 or 5, 6 hours training in the cold. We have to recover, run to run. We have to be able to recover for that next training run, which is usually a minute and a half long, and train our bodies to flush that lactic acid out, feel refreshed to where we can execute those movements over and over.
Wearing like at times almost nothing, like a very, very thin suit.
Well, there's that, and on a thin metal edge, in spandex, on a sheet of ice with a little suit and a helmet. Like it's like we're basically what skiing really is just balancing on a thin metal edge on a sheet of ice. So yes, there's the endurance aspect. Yes, there's the technique, the guts. But it's like you have to be able to remain focused and assess all this information that's coming in, and assess yourself, your body. Like, am I capable of this? Or and throughout the run of like, okay, I'm going to risk it here. This is where I'm going to kind of give it less and try and recover a little bit so I can risk it more in other sections. There's so many different aspects to skiing. It's hard to really, I could go down a whole rabbit hole on air. I'm not being super clear with this, right? But there's the G forces, there's the vibrations, like the sheet of ice. It's not like you're on a hockey pond. Like, this is the side of a mountain, and they do spray it down with water, and then it freezes, and so you're just constantly just like getting bumped. Stand on one of those vibe machines in the gym. Yeah, those are vibrations, but that's like yes. Vibrations is going 90 miles. These things in a squatted position, and then you're putting a few G's on top of your back. So that's brutal. And to remain clear in your mind and have that belief of what you're capable of is super, super important. The greatest trainer that I ever had was actually Austrian Special Forces. He really had this theory of fatiguing the entire body. So we'd alternate from anterior to posterior, upper body, lower body, core, and just 18, 20 exercises, just fatigue the entire body. And then when we're fatigued, go jump on a slack line, go do some coordinative drill, other balance drills, whatever it is, and try and function under fatigue. And so he'd train functioning under fatigue. And his whole thought was like, okay, if you can, those last 30 seconds, set yourself apart. If you can focus when you are when you're pushed against the wall, that's when you're going to set yourself apart, because everybody's pretty fast. Everybody's good skiers, and that's where you can get your advantage. So we'll do something like that. Mondays, Thursdays, Tuesdays, and Fridays are core. Skiing is so much core. Like, you think it's quads, you think it's big butts, like, oh, skiers got big butts and quads. It's so much just core, and just resisting those forces and trying to stay over the outside ski and moving forward and staying over your skis as you're going down the hill, trying to go faster. So we'll train all kinds of various core exercises, but that's all you're focused on during the day. And it's not crunches. It's like on a slack line with weights overhead, with bungees bouncing off the sides of your barbell, with other weights wiggling you left and right, and you just got to stay aligned and balanced and moving side to side, whatever it is. Like, that set me apart, and that really taught me a lot. We've had a lot of trainers, and a lot of the trainers think it's just like strength, but it's not strength, man. It's coordination, and it's the ability to focus and the ability to precisely move and balance. Like, that's skiing is balancing on a thin metal edge on ice, and then in the afternoons, it's about recovery or developing those anaerobic systems and aerobic systems. So I'll do some intervals, usually on the overall body days, the lower body focused and overall body days. I'll do more of a recovery hour and a half, easy bike, hike, jog. And then on Tuesdays, the core days, Tuesdays and Fridays, I'll do some sort of interval training and build up throughout the summer, start at 5-minute intervals. And then by the end of the summer, you're going into 10-minute intervals, just pushing that lactic threshold level higher and higher. And then on Wednesdays and Saturdays, it's usually a long endurance, like 3 to 4 hours of just kind of wandering through the mountains. So, like, hiking and just exploring the mountains and continually moving for that long amount of time, because that's what we do. A lot of our training days is just long days out in the mountains, and it's cold and brutal. So yeah, that's how I train all summer, and it's not really rocket science. A lot of people get into it and overthink all these things and look at all these energy systems and this and that, and it's just like, really train yourself to be able to focus under fatigue and build your body up to take hits, because crashes are brutal, and yeah, if you can take a hit and get back up, that's gonna allow you to race more and more.
Well, the technical aspect kind of comes next on this thing. And, I caveated that in terms of, there's the technique, which, all from your ability to be physically fit, but then there's also this equipment, and different races require different types of each, both different technique and to some different equipment, because there's different terrain. There's so many different things out there. And people, like you said, they're trying to, I call it Gucci gear, trying to like get you to buy all this stuff and tell you like this is going to be the one little thing that gives you this improvement. I think this is a really important part of it, though, because the margin of error in this sport is so small, fractions of a second. You won a World Cup by 0.3 of a second, which is actually an eternity of time in skiing. But you've also missed winning and other podiums by less than that. Sometimes 0.02 of a second have put you out of it. It's crazy to think about that small amount of time when you have to travel the distance and the elevation change that you do at 90 miles an hour. Yet the difference between being on the podium and not is like 1/10 of a second or 1/100th of a second. When we were kids, I know you remember, but like we skied on like skis that were 210 centimeters tall and straight. And we had like one set of boots. And now I have like 3 sets of skis. They all do different things. My wife's like, why do you need another set of skis? And I'm like, if everyone needs 4 sets of skis, like they do 4 different things, right? She's like, yeah, right. You grew up skiing on one set of skis for like 20 years. You don't need 4 sets of skis. But can you talk a little bit about the equipment though, and why it is actually important, and the evolution of the technology and how it's changed the sport over time?
Yeah, when we were kids, we were right on the cusp of carving skis. Mm-hmm. And it was around the turn of the century, which sounds like a long time ago. skis were long and straight, and it was a lot of just quads and butts and just like
throw your whole hip into it. It'll bring the ski around.
Like,
You'll be all right.
just like grind it and twist it and maneuver it. And now the skis do a lot of work for you. They'll carve, but we have a lot of regulations on the World Cup Tour to where we can't make the skis carve really easy. They're actually very long and very straight still, and we have to ski with the proper technique. We have to stay over the skis. What I mean by that, so say this is the ski and that's downhill. This is my body. Like, if I'm going down the hill and I'm continually moving with my skis, that's great. But if the skis are moving and I'm going like this, the skis are going to take you for a ride, and not vice versa. You want to tell the skis where to go, and bad things happen when the skis take you for a ride. So staying over the skis, and then there's also that's fore and aft, but side to side, you also have to stay over the skis there and continually get them to grip into the ice and move through that turn. But for me, it's been a long battle of figuring out the equipment. That's kind of the theme of my career, I should say. The skiing isn't built for a guy like me, 6'4", 220. It's not designed for me. Everything's designed around 5'10" guys, and the boot size is a 25.5, which is basically like a size 8 or 9 shoe. I have a size 13 shoe, so a boot, I have so much leverage on it. It doesn't deliver the energy to the ski the way that it's designed to deliver the energy. It actually loses, like when you're flexing forward, the lower part of the boot bulges out and the energy goes to the side, not to the tip. And I kept explaining this too. There's also another language barrier. I deal with basically mostly Europeans and German-speaking folk I don't speak the greatest German. So a lot is lost in translation. And so I keep telling them my feelings, expressing my feelings, and they're like, oh, it's not the boot, or try this, and they'll go every which way. And I spent like 3-4 years, I call them my dark years, just battling and trying to stay up and trying to do well and finish. And I got lucky here and there and extended my career. But then in 2014, the summer 2014, I was given these boots that they just threw fiberglass on the sides to prevent it from bulging out like this.
Instead of the plastic, in addition to the plastic.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, it delivered, when I go forward, it delivered the energy to the tip instead of out to the sides. And I was like, oh, I have something I can push on. Oh, the ski's reacting. Oh, this is so much easier than it's been for the past several years. And that also occurred because I did well. Like I ascended really well. I made the ski team in 2002 as a slalom skier. And then I broke my leg and I got good at speed skiing, and because slalom, the quick turns hurt my leg. So I was like, oh, the speed stuff's fun and I'm naturally good at it. And I ended up winning my first World Cup 4 years later, but then I got bigger and stronger and I just overpowered everything I had. And we'd try stiffer plastic compounds. We'd try different stiffnesses of skis. We'd try throwing carbon in here and there, and just nothing was working. And then that simple addition of fiberglass, it was just like, oh, it's on. And that year I won my third World Cup. The next year I was in 4 podiums in a row. I almost I was 4th at the World Championships. There's just a lot of really good stuff, because it was just like skiing is so much easier than I basically had like 4 years of extreme balance training on inferior gear. So figuring that out and understanding that energy transfer and feeling that again, like I had felt it in my career and I knew it existed, but I just didn't know how to get it there, get it back. And it came back, and I have that now. But I'll get into a story later in this podcast, but it's basically what I've been dealing with this entire season. I've basically taken a year and 3/4 off, and now I'm trying to make a comeback season for the Olympics, for my 4th Olympics. And it's just been an equipment battle all season long because my body's different. I've in the past 5 years blown both knees, torn an Achilles, broke my hand, and I just don't have that power anymore. And I'm trying to go back to the old equipment. It's too stiff and blah 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 blah. We can talk about is a massive component that you have to navigate, and I think it's extremely hard to navigate being my size because stuff isn't actually made for me.
Much different than like a moguler who is like small, compact. Although I can't imagine the stress put on their knees.
I can, because I try it every spring, and they do it in the middle of winter where it's sheer ice, and my knees feel like they're going to explode in the spring. So, but it's that's what keeps me coming back too. Is it's such a complex puzzle, this ski racing, and all the little pieces that go into it. It's not this reoccurring scenario like a football field or like a basketball court. It's the snow is always changing. The surface is continually changing. I know what I ski well on. I know I like ice. I like grippy snow, but when it's soft and gooey, I'm not very good at it. I need to work on that. I need to fix that. You mentioned earlier the different tracks. Wengen here is a glidey track. There's a lot of touch and feel and glide. That's when you're in your tuck. That's that little egg position you get into when you're the racers get into when they're skiing, trying to cut through the wind as fast as possible. There's a lot of that on this course, but there's 3 really key turns on this course that you have to nail if you want to do well in this race. And I went a lot of time in those 3 key major turns, so I need to really figure those out this year. And then there's like the really demanding courses like Kitzbühel that are more vertical drop and in your face, and you have to create and generate a lot of belief in yourself to risk it, to push for the podium there. So it's ever changing. Every place you go is different. Every weekend's different. And then whatever the weather gods provide, you have to deal with. There's not a lot of controllable things aside from your equipment, and you have to understand, okay, does this setup work in this scenario? Does it work in this scenario? Blah blah blah. So it's like F1. It's more like F1 for rednecks. So we're just honestly, it's a bunch of rednecks.
I love F1.
We're just like tinkering with little things, throwing duct tape on this and that, and it does make a big difference. So we're playing with 0.25 degrees of bevel on the base bevel on the ski, so the ski's flat and the edges are on the side, and we actually trim those edges up a little bit, so when you lay the ski over it bites sooner or later, and then there's an edge degree bevel on the side of the edge that makes it bite harder or not. There's all kinds of little things that we are trying to manipulate and change to make us feel more comfortable to push harder and go faster.
And it makes a difference. I mean, there was a bunch of classes on ski tuning a while back, and I was like, I can be a ski tuner. And so I bought all the equipment and I set up the whole thing in my garage, and my wife's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm tuning my own skis. Right. And then you realize, like, after you screw it up a couple of times, like, those things actually really matter. And it does affect the performance of the ski, especially at like those speeds. But you brought up the third piece here, which is the mental factors of this. I mean, there's so much that goes into the trust. When as you were talking, the word trust is coming back to my mind. Confidence is coming back to my mind. Confidence in the equipment, confidence and trust in your performance and your ability to perform in these conditions based on your overall capability, also your training. I mean, I tore my shoulder, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. I had just come off the north face at Crested Butte. So like ridiculous terrain, like come off. I'm like, yeah, that was awesome. I'm the best. And then my binding broke, like right before the lift line. My binding broke. I fell down. I tore my shoulder. There's like nothing that I can do about it.
On the groomer.
Right. Yeah. On the groomer, on the green. Like I remember looking up and being like, I'm on a green and I tore my shoulder. I can't believe this. But this trust and confidence is critical, but you also talked about the uncontrollables, right? I say controlling the uncontrollables, focusing on what is actually in your span of control versus what you're not. You said the weather. The weather is one that I bring up all the time. Special operations. We always said the weather is like the number one thing that you cannot control, but it is like the first thing that you start getting emotional about, right? And it's like, oh, it's raining. Oh God, everything's over. Oh, it's snowing. And then you get like the first drip of rain or snow right down your neck. And then all of a sudden it's like, I'm freezing. I can't do anything else. But there's like nothing you can do about it. When you think about these factors, controlling the uncontrollables, the mental factors, the trust, the confidence, when do you know you're in the zone? When all of that doesn't matter, when you're just here and you've taken it all in and you're ready to go.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier I had a podium streak. No other American man's done that in downhill, and I just I had that feeling. I knew how my skis were going to react, and it didn't matter. Like I did it in a blizzard in Chamonix. I did it in perfect bluebird weather in Korea. I did it in high windy situation in St. Moritz. And what was the other one? Kvitfjell was bitter cold. Like whatever, give it to me. I'll do it. I was at one with my skis, and I knew how they were going to react. And a lot of that came from preparation. A lot of that came from all the time I'd spent throughout the summer, throughout the winter, just dialing stuff in and finding that balance, finding that feeling. I call it the tempo on the skis. When I tell the skis to go, they go. I know when they go, how quick they're going to go, and how quick they're going to pull, and then when to release the turn. And I have these spots, these things I see. From each gate to gate that I'll basically see this point, and I'm just throwing all my energy toward that next point, because that next point is where I'm going to initiate that ski, and it's going to do the same thing, and I'm going to throw my energy to the next point, and I just know how it's going to react, so I can therefore see those points, and then I just go from point to point to point to point, and I just seek for more and more speed. There's not a lot of thought. Like it's a feeling, and it's a drive. It's just some key words. One of the key words that I use a lot in my goal setting is drive my hands, drive my hips, because that drive is that push down the hill, the push for more speed. And if I can get to that point and find that comfort zone and that belief in myself, then things tend to be good. And it all starts with you've hit those points correct. It starts with the physical aspect. Like I have to prepare myself. I have to be a beast. I have to be capable of withstanding these pressures and pushing my body over a long amount of time, and bouncing on that thin metal edge. And then I have to have my equipment dialed. And a lot of that, it's what's tough is a lot of that's done over the summer. And during COVID, we're in the summer in Switzerland on glaciers. Like the snow isn't the same as the winter. The weather isn't the same as the winter. So I'm like trying to dial equipment in summer conditions, which is never what it is here in the winter anyway. So that's a problem I ran into this summer, and I've been trying to unwind that mess that I created. And getting the equipment dialed, and then once all that's dialed, now it's like, okay, what's that belief? What's that vision? What are those things that you see, and are you willing to actually do it and risk and go?
I want to throw another set of words at you. These come from Rich Vinny, a colleague of mine at Talent Warrior, former Navy author of a book called The Attributes. We interviewed him in episode 41, the first episode of this year. And he talks about optimal performance. And that optimal performance is your ability to compete at your best at any given time, given all the factors. So maybe not peak performance. Sometimes it is peak performance. It might not always be peak performance, because peak's your absolute best given kind of the perfect scenario, right? But optimal is performing your best based on all the other inputs. But there's this term mental acuity. that he brings up, and that's a mix of situational awareness, compartmentalization, task switching, and learnability. Skiing requires this high degree of mental acuity. You talked about going down and picking your points gate to gate, but you're taking in all this information, all this stuff going around you. And so you have to have this high situational awareness to see it and understand it. But then you also have to have compartmentalization, because you have to focus on what's next. So you can't be thinking about what happened behind you. It's about what's coming up. And then there's this task switching. You have all these things that you talked about going on in your body, your legs, your core, your arms. And so now you have to start thinking about, when do I focus on what based on what I'm about to happen, is what I'm about to go through. But then also learnability. Are you taking the feedback that your body and the course and skis are giving you to then make the changes? How do you triage all that? When you're in the zone, you're going out, it's 90 miles an hour, all this is coming at you. How do you actually start making those corrections and thinking about, I have to focus on this, I can't worry about this, and then making the in-moment adjustments, if you will?
Earlier, the weather can determine a lot, which is sad, but in 2015, we had the World Championships in Beaver Creek, and I'd say that's one of my most proud runs ever. Like, on home soil,
Birds of
something
prey.
I dreamed about. Yeah, birds of prey. Beaver Creek, Colorado, a course that I'd done well on before. I podiumed earlier that year at it. You just had I hadn't really been healthy for an Olympics or a World Championship event, and this year I was healthy and ready to go, and things were good, and I dialed it. I skied as good as I could. I skied fantastic, but in the middle of the pitch, this is a 6-gate long steep pitch. You're never tucking down it, and I'm going down this thing, and I saw ahead of me that this wind gust is just coming up the run. They ran the race in a windy day, and I saw it, and I just grabbed my tuck down this pitch and was like I've never done it ever since.
Here we go.
But I could just see it, and I did it, and I just instinctively was just in the zone and just moved and kept going and fought, and I ended up fourth. I think it was 100th or 200th off the podium. But I executed the way I intended to execute, and I did my best, and I went beyond myself because I was so in the zone, and I saw what I needed to do immediately in that situation. But a lot of that, the ability to assess the situation and change and adapt immediately, is through repetition, through work. I've been doing this ever since I was 2. I mentioned that gliding aspect. Like, I'm one of the best in the world at that. And I think it's honestly from Sundance, Utah, where I grew up. And they have a front mountain and a back mountain. And to get from the back mountain to the front mountain, you had to ski down this run, the toilet bowl. And then you had this big, long flat. And I didn't understand physics, but I'd chase the BYU ski team down the mountain, and these 20-year-old men, and I'm like 6, 7, 8 years old, and I'm trying to figure out how to keep up with them and find that touch on my skis and just glide. And I think it came from that. So unintentionally, I was developing those skills over time. And then it's just been it's a highly repetitive, what I should say. So in ski racing, we don't get that many opportunities too. Like, if you actually add up all the time that we're on a course and we are going through the actions, you can just reinforce poor habits. And that's been kind of an American theme to a lot of my ski racing career, is like, we'll set a course and then figure it out, And we got this Austrian coach that came in several years ago, and he was fantastic, because he's like, you guys are like, when I say figure it out, it was like 10, 12 runs a day, kind of do little things all day long, and make a bunch of mistakes and kind of figure little things out, and it may come together every once in a while. But the Austrian coach was like, you have 2 runs today. You have 4 runs today. And I'm cutting you off. Like, you have to perform on demand. When you have that opportunity, you do it. And he brought that into our training aspect. And I thought that allowed me to perform on demand. That allowed me to go when I was called upon for race time. So that's when I became more consistent, was when I knew, okay, this is my opportunity and I'm ready, because I proved it in training. Like, you got 2 runs. Can you do it? You know, you have this 1 run to do it. Do it. That I found very interesting, because I just grew up with the kind of set the course, figure it out, cowboy style. Here we go. You know, like, told you, it's rednecks.
Well, there's a discipline aspect to it, and the discipline aspect forces you to focus. And once you're forced to focus, now it becomes much more real. It's not like, well, I'll get it the next time. Like, I got to do it now. Let's talk about Sundance, though. Growing up, your parents were both instructors. Your dad ran the ski school. They own a ski shop. Your 3 and yourself, all amazing skiers. I have to give a shout out to your brother, Blake, your younger brother, who I had the opportunity and the pleasure to work with in one of my previous jobs. And just, I have the utmost respect for him and everything he's done, and just an awesome coworker. And that guy, he just crushes everything he does. It's such a high level. So Blake, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Man. He is so incredibly talented at whatever he does. And when we were younger, he was the man. I have an older brother, and then Blake was younger than me. I'm the second oldest. And then we have a younger brother, Sam, who is 7 years later. So Blake was the fastest. Blake had all the talent in the world. And there was a race when I was younger where my older brother beat me, Blake beat me, and I just like hid under my bed and cried, you know. But I'm the competitive one. I'm the one that I'm still fighting at 40, you know. It's great. But Blake was he was good at ski racing, and then he quit and became a good snowboarder, and then he went back to skiing, and then he was in ski cross, and then he was in the movies, and he does flips and does all double flips, all this stuff. Like, Blake is good, and it's pretty cool to see it transfer over to the business world. But yeah, Sundance, and I think growing up with those brothers and living on the mountain is one of the major things that developed me in the way that I did. When I was 16, though, I grew up at Sundance, and we had the ski team, and it was okay. Like, a lot of the times the coaches didn't show up, and it wasn't the most structured.
It wasn't the Austrian discipline.
Yeah, but we'd go out and we'd free ski, and we'd challenge ourselves and push ourselves on the mountain, and then when there were gates, we'd go train gates. But then when I was 16, fortunately, Park City had a World Cup, and they'd prepare that the Thanksgiving weekend, and then it'd just be the sheet of ice all winter long, and we get to train on that hill. And so there happened to be some of the best kids in the nation were all from Park City, and it was 45 minutes from me. So I worked out a deal with my high school that I got out at noon, and I could drive up to Park City and train with those guys. And I did.
Not a bad deal.
No, it was cool. I created my own curriculums. I didn't have to do PE because I was already pursuing that. I didn't have to do art. I'd do that in the summer at Sundance. It's kind of an art-based community, and I'd learn how to do things up there with like real artists. And so that allowed me to kind of skip those classes, get out at noon, go up there. And I guess I was creative because we couldn't afford the academies, the private schools. A lot of these kids were going to. I had to make it work on a dime, you know. So that's what we figured out, and I did it. And I got up there, and I was the best at Sundance, and I was nowhere near the best at Park City. I was just this little peon, you know. But I wanted to get to that point. And the first year I was on the Park City B team, which is like your points are under 200, and the points system, it's like you start at 990, and the best guy in the world is at 0, and so you got to like chip away and get down. So I was around like 200 points, which is like 5,000th in the world or whatever it is. And then I wanted to get to the A team, which had to be under 100 points. And I did that. And then I wanted to get to U.S. Nationals, and I did that. And then I wanted a podium as a junior. It was just like the step-by-step goals. I just reach for it and push for it every single year and see where I had to go and what I had to do. And I just compete and alongside some of the best kids. I got to expose myself and be next to other competitors. And I thought that team just fostered that competitive style. And that's something that I look at right now and look at these teams, and they just coddle these kids. And I'm like, you got to compete. Like, you got to foster this battle within these kids. And it's not like you give out top 10 awards, like, I'm like, it's not top 10, it's top 3. Keep it top 3, but it's
I call it grit. I'm on grit kick right now because we've had a bunch of conversations about it, and like the last couple of episodes have actually, it's come up in every conversation, and it's come up in the same way that you've just brought it up, that there's a younger demographic, there's a younger generation that has come up, and I've tried to pinpoint what's missing and what's not there. And I think it's this grit, this, what Rich Diviney calls, courage, perseverance, adaptability, resilience, this piece of you that just says, I'm going to do this at all costs, and it's going to be nasty. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to feel good. But every time it doesn't feel good, I'm going to make it feel worse. But that's what it takes. That's what it takes to win. That's what it takes to compete at the highest level. That's what it takes to operate at an elite level. I think about, special forces and the things that the guys who were there, the guys that when I went in, I looked up to. I tell a story all the time. The guy who was my team sergeant when I showed up in my special forces team, takes one look at me and he's like, how long have you been in the Army? And I'm like, I don't know, like 7 years. And he's like, well, I've been on this team for 20 years. I'm like, what? And he's been like everywhere and done all this stuff, and then it's just so different now at this younger demographic. And you brought, you talked about your injuries and, how do you come back from that stuff at 40? And it's because of grit.
I guess I just still want to solve the puzzle, this never-ending puzzle, and I love the game, and I love trying to solve it. But it's that grit and that desire to compete and that desire to win is what drives me. And I've been far away from it this year. Like, I shouldn't say far, but I have like 2-3 good sections, and then I just have 2 sections on the course that I just absolutely blow it. But those 2 or 3 good sections give me the hope that I can do this. Like, I am there. I'm close. I just need to remain focused. I just need to not make those mistakes. I need to execute and dial it in. And I think people think I'm crazy because I'm old and there's a lot at risk. Like, I'm not old. Like, I don't feel old, but there's a lot at risk. It's more what I'm starting to say is just like, I can hurt myself, and I have done that quite a bit. And do I want to go through that again? And that's something that I faced a lot this past rehab. I tore my right Achilles August 2020. And for one, I tore my left Achilles 2011. It takes a lot longer to heal when you're almost 40.
With the second one, and both ACLs,
yeah,
right?
Like 7 months. I was like, I'll be on the World Cup. Got this. Last year, I was like, I don't got this. I'll take the year off. But now I'm in the year, and I'm like, okay, it's been like a year and 3/4 of not ski racing, and there's a lot of things I got to refine, and just the ability to process this information at such high speeds. Like, I've been out of it. Like, I'm slow. Like, I can't process this stuff. I'm scared. Do I really want this? Do I really want to send it off this blind jump with full conviction? And I had to go through these motions and really convince myself that it's possible again. And I'm still doing that, but I'm feeling closer and closer and more capable. But time's ticking for the Olympics. So,
well, how do you do it? Because I told you that before we started, I wanted to talk about fear and I wanted to talk about pressure, and you brought up fear here, and it's interesting because I call skiing and mountains in general, mountaineering, it's a great equalizer. There are those things in life that it doesn't matter what kind of athlete you are, how amazing of a special forces operator you are. I mean, I have seen some of our nation's greatest warriors get on the side of a mountain and be in fear and have to sit there and be like, it's okay, man. Like, it's okay. I know you've killed like 1,000 terrorists, but like, we're just on the side of a hill. Like, you just point them
with skis
down.
on?
Yeah, with skis on. Like, just point them down. And like, if it doesn't work, like fall on the ground. You'll probably be okay. And you
The
see
greatest
it,
coach.
right? Yeah, and you're yeah, exactly. That's my coaching ability.
Some gets in your way, turn.
Right. And that's even like guys who've gone through training. I mean, I was fortunate enough so I commanded a special forces mountaineering team. That was our certified by the Professional Ski Instructors of America as ski instructors. We went up with Summit County's avalanche search and rescue crews. We worked and trained avalanche rescue with them. We skied with the ski patrol at at Loveland, at Vale, Breckenridge, and went in like the nastiest stuff. And we had helicopters. We trained with the medevac units, and they would drop us on the top of glaciers. We'd rappel down, we'd cross them, we'd climb back up. They'd pick us up off the glaciers. We'd run all these scenarios. But skiing in the mountains, they put you in these situations. You said, can I launch off of this blind jump with full conviction and just know that it's going to be okay? It's testing the mental, physical, and kind of technical confidence in every aspect that you can imagine. Fear elicits an action. The action is fight, flight, or freeze. Courage is our ability to push through, kind of choose one of those. But when we really think about courage, we're really thinking about fight more than anything else. How do you do it? Right. And so you talked about, I've got to will myself now to just make it happen and do it. And you told the story about, the wind coming up on birds of prey and just tucking and going for it. Where you sit here today and we have this conversation, you think about what's coming. How do you just flip that switch and say, I'm going to go? It's got to happen.
Number one is preparation. Like, you have to have something to fall back on. Like, am I ready? Am I capable of this? Two, so we get to inspect the courses beforehand, and we slide down and we get a look at, all right, here's this blind jump. This is where I got to go. But I'm coming in here just staring at a horizon. I got to think, okay, I'm going off at 12:30, 1 o'clock.
It's like NASCAR. You got to pick a point like out on the mountain and go for it.
Exactly. And then you're like, and I'm going to press roughly this hard to get back to the backside of this roll. But if I press too hard, I'm going to hit the front side and just smack. Or if I don't press hard enough, I'm going to fly way too far and crash. So the course, I've won 3 World Cups, and they're all on the same hill, Val Gardena, and it has 20 to 30 jumps each year, and they're a lot are just blind rolls, and I just know 90% of the field is going to go with hesitation, and if I can convince myself of each one of these rolls to go with conviction, I'm ahead of 90% of the field already. And then it's knowing, like, I've put in the time, and I know how to judge and assess and figure these things out. But it's like knowing when you're coming down, all right, am I kicking ass? Am I good? Did I dial that in? Am I carrying a lot of speed? Okay. You have to like constantly weigh these things in your head. It's like, okay, I'm going faster. I got to press harder. I'm going too fast. I got to like ditch a little speed. I'm going really slow. I got to pop this thing. I have this little computer inside of my head that's constantly just churning, knowing what's possible and where I'm at. And luckily I've done these courses a lot before, so I'm making good decisions. But of course, I've also crashed a lot on it because I am convincing myself and I do the wrong thing, you know. And
I
I
got
go
this.
off and I'm like, that was wrong. Here we go. Bam. You know?
That's like an absolute worst feeling is midair when you're like, oh no, I've done that
Thought I was right,
plenty of
but I'm
times.
not. But typically though, I'm usually not that dumb as these days. But like when I first made the World Cup, I took meticulous notes, exactly where I needed to go on every roll and everything. And then the second year on the World Cup, I reverted back to those notes and was reading them. And then the first training run, I went and kind of did the same thing I did the year prior, but it was actually completely different, which was a big learning lesson. But I went off this jump the way I had the year prior and just sailed and flat landed on my butt and was like, I could barely walk actually, but I ended up winning that race. And it was because I didn't look at what was in front of me. I referred to something that I had experienced in the past and actually didn't enter that race. I call it with an open mind and really actually looked at what was going on today and in the now. I was just stuck in the past and what I knew I could do. The year prior, I had crashed, but I was really fast and I saw how I could win there, but I just never had the opportunity to do it. So I was like, this is my opportunity. Let's go. And messed up in one of the training runs, but then I ended up winning the thing. So knowing, luckily at that point in my career, it wasn't that bad. And I was like, okay, I have to every day learn from the past, but go into this with an open mind and a clean canvas to really paint my picture that day, because it's always different and always changing.
I want to ask you about the pressure of the moment.
I didn't really answer your question though.
No, you
actually
did. No.
Okay. It was more about like, I mean, we went like through fear and all this stuff, but like the fear aspect, it's to revert back to that. It's all about preparation, experience, and then one important thing I wanted to drive was the belief in yourself. And I've learned also that you can go down these courses and in downhill, there's 1 to 3 training runs before the actual race. So we get to go down, we get to try our lines, you get to see other guys do certain lines, and we have a ton of video analysis and we get to compare and overlay and see like who is the fastest in this section and that section and that section. And then come race day, you got to sew it all together and make it happen. And there's a lot of times where I saw the fastest line and I'd go in there with hesitation, knowing I'm going to try this fastest line, but I'm not really convinced I can do it. And I'm slow. But if I see the fastest line during an inspection and then find something that I am 100% convinced that I can do with just full conviction, that's going to be the fastest thing that I can do. And if I commit to that and hammer through it with intention and drive instead of a little hesitation, I'm going to come out way faster than with that little hesitation, even though I'm on the right line. So it's knowing who you are, your style, what you're capable of, and committing to that.
And you can make an argument that that's true for anything you do in life.
Exactly.
Even outside of skiing. The pressure of the moment, and so I'm going to quantify this because at the point of execution is where mentally so many things come together, especially in athletics. We've had previous conversations about this with Olympic silver medalist in women's rowing. One of the greatest women's rower of all time is Jevy Stone, and Jevy said that she's motivated going into the starting sequence and at the starting line because that's why she trains. She trains to compete. This is the moment. Everything she's done up to that point is to do exactly what she's there to do at that moment. Laura Wilkinson, Olympic gold medal diver, standing 10 meters, 30 feet in the air on the edge of the platform, says that she at that moment can perform because she trusts in her training. Austin Collie, NFL wide receiver for the Patriots and the Colts, says it's all about the team, that his ability to execute comes from, I can't let my team down. Jerry Remy was the late Jerry Remy, passed away late last year, was a second baseman for the Boston Red Sox in the Red Sox Hall of Fame. And I asked him about closing pitchers. And I said, how does a closing pitcher get up on the mound? And he said, it's because they know there's no one else. They have to perform or they lose the game. So it's all on them and they own that moment. When you're in the starting block, the buzzer's counting down, the front end of the skis are hanging off the edge, the poles are planted. There's nothing but white ice, as you called it, and some distant mountains out there. What's going through your head?
When I'm confident or when I'm not?
Both, because it's important. It's an important distinction. And maybe that's what it is.
My first year on the World Cup, 05-06 season, I qualified through the NORAM Tour. I had a spot. I went to the first World Cups in Lake Louise, and I was 17th. And then I went to Beaver Creek, and I was 23rd. And they were like, whoa, okay, this kid's good. That we just plan on sending him through those first two races. Now we're taking him to Europe. I was fast in the training runs at Beaver Creek or Val Gardena. Then I crashed. Then I went to Bormio, and I ended up like 27th, which is probably the second most demanding course on tour. And then Wengen, I think I was top 30 as well. Top 30 is usually good. You get World Cup points. It shows you're competing with the big boys. And then I went to Kitzbühel, and Kitzbühel is the most daunting mentally. It's just in your face, so steep, big terrain changes to high. You pick up speed super high, and then you're just like facing massive compressions into big jumps, all kinds of crazy stuff. And there's 50 to 70,000 people. You basically ski into a football stadium at the end. And I was in the start gate, and I was like, I did not feel comfortable. I didn't feel comfortable until 5-6 years ago in that course. I was overthinking it, and that's a whole nother story. But I was in the start gate, and I just heard the story of this guy who quit there, a former U.S. ski team. It's like, I'm done. Like, I'm not in it. I don't want to do this anymore. And he backed off, and that was the end of his career.
Wow.
And I was up there, and I was like, I don't want to do this. But I don't want that story being told to me. That was my thought, and I went. I ended up top 30, but it was like, it wasn't fun. But when I'm in the zone, it's those points I talked about. It's that desire to go faster there and there and there and there and get in a tighter position and get back to the ground as quick as possible and move over that terrain and stay connected. That's what's going through my head, is like active and drive are kind of my two words. Just stay active and drive, stay active and drive. And the other stuff's going to come second nature. That's what all the training's been for. That's what I've done for years and years and years now, is develop these habits, good habits. You can develop a lot of bad habits, but I've developed good habits and I've developed bad habits. And trusting in those habits that you've developed to come about when you're going down the hill. That's what's going to happen, is all the good stuff that you're trying to develop. And all you have to focus on is going faster and faster and hitting those points that you've gone over in your head, that you've visualized, and you slipped down the course and memorized, and you've seen yourself do it over and over and over again. And now it's just going to go and do it, because this is your opportunity. And when I was younger, I would fear away from that. But now it's like, that's why I put all this work in. That's all these years. Like, I'm itching to race. Like, I didn't have the greatest race a couple weeks ago in Bormio, but I had a lot of good sections, and I'm just like, I want that next race to come about. Like, I don't want to wait 2 weeks. I want to go into it now. I want to work at this. I want to figure motivates me instead of um, fearing coming into these places. And I've been there here in Wengen. I've come here and I'm just like, I don't really want to be here right now, but I'm here right now and I want to be here. And it's a big opportunity in front of me to perform to make the Olympics.
Yeah, now you got to seize it and get after it. Well, what I'll tell you, because I looked it up, is that if you make the team, you'll be 3.5 years older than any American Olympic alpine skier who's ever been there. Your friends have said that you're going to be the Tom Brady of skiing, and you're going to go and compete till you're 50. But you have a ways to go to set the Olympic record, because the Olympic record is actually, Winter Olympics is 8, set by Noriaki Kasai of Japan, who's competed consecutively from 1992 through 2018 and is planning to be there this year. He's a ski jumper, and also in the next one is also his plan. So you got to get to 10 to set the Olympic record.
Wow. So I was going to say, what sport is that? Like archery or something? But that's like, ski jumping is pretty gnarly too.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Well, Stephen, as we close out, the Jedburghs had to do 3 things as core foundational tasks every day in order to win. They had to shoot, they had to move, they had to communicate. If they were proficient in these 3 core tasks, then their energy could be focused on other challenges that came their way, of which there were numerous in their plight in France in World War II. What are the 3 things that you do every day to set the conditions for success in your world?
The first thing I'd say is to be able to step back away from yourself, honestly, and look at yourself and just critique yourself and whatever it is you're trying to achieve. But I guess the step before that is setting goals. And it's similar to what you said. You have the 3 things. Every day when I get on the hill, I have a little journal. It's actually a Google document that I share with my coaches, so they can pull it up on their phone and they know what I'm focusing on, and what my key kind of words are, my key goal words. And I hold it to 2 or 3 things just to keep it simple. If it's over the outside, drive the hips, hands in vision, active, drive, they change. But setting those goals and then being able to step away and reassess yourself honestly and be like, okay, am I on the right track? Am I not? That's really key. And then just being able to ask yourself, do I love it? You know, is this what I believe do I believe that what I'm doing? And that's kind of what I ask myself every day. Am I doing what I want to do? And am I committed to it and doing it right? And how do I do it? It was kind of the 3 steps.
So set deliberate goals, step back and look critically at ourselves. And do you love it? Is it right? Is it what you want to be doing? I love those 3. So we have the 9 characteristics of performance as defined by Special Operations Forces. They're a driving force here on our podcast: drive, resiliency, adaptability, integrity, curiosity, team ability, effective intelligence, and emotional strength. And we say that all high performers, you need to exhibit all of these at different times, never really all at once, but at different times based on the situation you're in, you'll have them. And then I pick one and I look at my guests and I say, this is the one that I think exemplifies you. And you've spoken so much in this episode about drive not only in the technical aspect and the technical nature of the sport, but also the drive to perform, over the longevity that you've shown in the sport, the want and the need to get better continuously, get back out there, still compete at the highest level. And I do think one that I would attribute to you, but I'm going to do something I rarely do here, and I think it's really important. But I have full faith and 100% support you as you go out here this week and you try to make this team, because in this conversation, it's not just drive. You set the example on all 9 of these because you've lived them. You exhibit the drive to get back out there and keep competing. You've been resilient year on year after a multitude of injuries. And what you didn't mention is that the last couple of years, despite right now, the last couple of years after injury have been some of your best years in your entire career. So there's nothing to fear in terms of coming back. Your adaptability to try new things, iterate, humility that you just talked about in your three foundations, to look at yourself and say, what do I need to do to get better, is there. The integrity of wanting to be there and being and doing what's right. The curiosity to explore ways to get better, whether it's your equipment or your technique. The team exhibit with the rest of your team, your coaches, the setting of the goals that you talked about. Effective intelligence. How do you take everything over the last 20 years, more 30, 40 years almost of on skis and 20 years on the national team and put it together to say, I'm going to go out here and do this. And then the emotional strength to remain calm, stand at that starting block and get out there and just execute. You've done it at the highest level of this sport. Like I told you at the beginning, I am so honored to have sat here and spoken with you today. I've watched you through the years. 3-time World Cup winner, 10 podiums, multiple Olympics. Brother, 11 podiums. Brother, I wish you the best. I'll be watching.
Fire me up, Fran.
Your kids will be watching, and absolutely everything that the Jedburghs in World War II demonstrated, our soft warriors demonstrate out there. Elite performers in every organization exhibit. We're all behind you. Good luck.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining.
Fired up.
American Jedburghs went on to form the foundation of the United States Special Forces and the Special Activities Directorate of the Central Intelligence Agency. Thanks for listening to the Jedburgh Podcast. I'm your creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Join us next week for a new episode on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube for full episodes, highlights, and other behind-the-scenes content. If you like what you heard, give us a like and leave a review. Follow me, Fran Racioppi, Talent War Group, and our sponsor Jersey Mike Subs on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Send your comments and inquiries to media@talentwargroup.com. As former members of Special Operations Forces, the Jedburgh Podcast and Talent War Group contribute a percentage of all profits to Special Operations Warrior Foundation, supporting the families of our fallen warriors. Thanks for joining us on this episode. How you prepare today determines success tomorrow.